Beep, 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 beep. Right, Jester special. Here we are. Right, bear with me. Okay, cold breeding. It's available. It is now 11:47. Gender questioning children, non-statutory guidance for schools and colleges in England, draft for consultation, December 2023. Bear in mind this is a consultation. There'll be a period of time in which we can respond, and the sooner we do that, the better. Right? Okay, so here we go. Right, cold breeding. I've not looked at it, so bear with me if I pause and stutter, and let's go through it straight away as we see it. Right, so the foreword. Schools and colleges are places where children should be given the knowledge, the skills and the opportunity to succeed in life. In recent years, we've seen a significant increase in the number of children questioning the way they feel about being a boy and girl, including questioning attributes of sex and related ways in which they fit in society. This has been linked to gender identity ideology, the belief that a person can have a gender that is different to their biological sex. This changing picture has left schools and colleges in a position where they are having to navigate a highly sensitive, complex issue, which is still not properly understood. We appreciate how daunting this is for school and college staff and for parents and children too. The only thing I would say there to begin with is it's absolutely properly understood. That's nonsense. We know exactly what it is. That is why, for the first time, the Department for Education, working closely with the government's Equality Hub, has worked to produce this guidance to provide clarity for schools and colleges and reassurance for parents. This is the Department for Education being Keegan, and the government's Equality Hub being Badenoch, right? Keegan and Badenoch. Love it. Schools facing requests to take action, such as changing names, uniforms, or using different facilities to help a child appear more like the opposite sex, with the expectation that they will be treated as if they are. This is often referred to as social transitioning. This guidance is based on a set of 5 general principles that schools and colleges can use to frame their response to such requests. Number 1, schools and colleges have statutory duties to safeguard and promote the welfare of children. Number 2, schools and colleges should be respectful and tolerant places where bullying is never tolerated. Number 3, parents should not be excluded from decisions taken by a school or college relating to requests for a child to socially transition. Schools and colleges have specific legal duties that are framed by a child's biological sex, and there is no general duty to allow a child to social transition. You can say no. Right? You can say no. The CAS review is clear that social transition is not a neutral act and that better information is needed about the outcomes for children who undertake degrees of social transition. This means that schools and colleges should take a cautious approach and that decisions should never be taken in haste or without the involvement of parents. Schools and colleges should consider how best to fulfil their safeguarding duties towards the child who is making such a request, and of course to their peers, ensuring that any agreed course of action is in all of their best interests. There will be some requests for a type of social transition that will not be compatible with schools' legal duties. Schools must abide by this. We are now consulting on this guidance and welcome responses from the likes of parents, teachers, head teachers, pupils and clinicians. Nothing is more important than keeping children safe, and we are grateful to all those who will help us get this right. Signed, the Right Honourable Gillian Keegan, the Right Honourable Kenny of the Badenoch. Right? Okay, so it then goes on to discuss who the guidance is for, but then we get to an interesting bit, which is the overarching principles. It's a 20-page document, bear that in mind. So, overarching principles. They've said that there's, the basis is those 5 points I've already made. So they've gone into a little bit more detail about those. So let's look at those and see what the overview is. They should consider, for example, schools and colleges have statutory duties to safeguard and promote the welfare of children. They should consider how best to fulfil that duty towards the child who is making such a request, and of course their peers, ensuring that any agreed course of action is in the best interest. This may or may not be the same as a child's wishes. Knowing a child's sex is critical to schools and colleges' safeguarding duties. So there you go. You must record the child's sex. Number 2, schools and colleges should be respectful and tolerant places where bullying is never tolerated. Staff and children should treat each other with compassion and consideration in accordance with the ethos of the school or college. Fair enough. The only problem I've got with that is the word respectful. Right? People don't get respect automatically. That should just say tolerant. That's just me, right? Parents should not be excluded from decisions taken by a school or college relating to requests for a child to socially transition. So where the child requests action from a school or college in relation to any degree of social transition, schools and colleges should engage parents as a matter of priority. As a matter of priority. and encourage the child to speak to their parents, other than in exceptionally rare circumstances where involving parents would constitute a significant risk of harm to the child, in which case there should already be a safeguarding case raised. They haven't said that, I've said that, right? Schools and colleges have specific legal duties that are framed by the child's biological sex. While legislation exists that allow adults to go through a process to change their legal sex, children's legal sex is always the same as their biological sex. There is no general duty, my favourite, to allow a child to socially transition. Again, it mentions the CAS report that social transition is not a neutral act. If a school or college decides to accommodate requests, and none of them should be doing that, a cautious, that's me again, by the way, a cautious approach should be taken that complies with legal duties. Some forms of social transition will not be compatible with school and colleges' statutory responsibilities. Then they go on to give some language and terminology. Now, this is going to be very interesting for the feedback that we can give as individuals on this particular subject. So what they're saying is here that child and children refer to anyone under 18, right? And then it says if there are institutions serving post-16 children, students under the age of 18 might share classes with those over the age of 18. The consideration for colleges will generally be the same for these individuals as they are for pupils and students under the age of 18. So 18 is the cutoff. They're a child under that. Good. The term parents refers to any adult with parental or caring responsibility for the child. Right, so it then gives you some definitions. Here we go, folks. Hey! Oh, they ain't gonna like it, they ain't gonna like it, and I don't care. Gender identity is a contested belief. Hurrah! Says I. It is a sense a person may have of their own gender, whether male, female, or another category such as non-binary. This may or not be the same as their biological sex. Many people do not consider that they or others have a gender identity at all. So what they're saying is it's a niche belief system, like any other niche belief system, and you should no more give it credence in school than you would somebody who thought they were a Zarathustrian, right? Or that, you know, by waving their hand like that, magically money would appear in their pocket. So in other words, it's a niche nutter system. That's what I see that as, right? So, no, we're not doing that for a niche nutter system. We're done. Gender questioning is a broad term that prescribes children and young people who are asking questions about their biological sex and perceived gender identity. Perceived, meaning it doesn't exist. Oh, they're going to be mad today, the nutters. Gender distressed or confused is a way of describing distress or confusion that may arise from a broad range of experiences connected to a child's understanding of their biological sex and associated attributes and behaviours, but where a formal diagnosis of gender dysphoria has not been made. Now, I would prefer it to say body dysmorphia because it's not gender dysphoria, but let's work with what we've got. So what they're saying is here that gender distress is actually distress about biological sex. It's got nothing to do with gender. Genius, right? Okay. Oh, I've got gender dysphoria. No, you haven't. You just don't like your body. That's right, you're a teenager. You ever read The Ugly Duckling? Social transition, their definition. A term often used to refer to a process by which people change their name, pronouns, clothing, or use different facilities from those provided for their biological sex. Not all people who go through this process will do so in the same way. Not all requests made to schools or colleges will comply with legal duties to safeguard children. Social transitioning is not a neutral act, as it's been recognised that it can have formative effects on a child's future development. That's essentially don't do it. Right, okay? Gender incongruence is a medical diagnostic term for a marked and persistent incongruence between an individual's experienced gender identity and their biological sex. Gender dysphoria is a similar diagnostic term to describe gender incongruence of at least 6 months duration, which is manifested by a number of criteria. The condition is associated with clearly significant distress or impairment in social and other important areas of functioning. We use the term must and should throughout this guidance. We use the term must when the person in question is legally required to do something in all cases. We use should when the guidance sets out the department's expectations. Oh, I want to do a little jig. I do. Right, okay, shall we move on? That's only page 7. Oh my God. Responding to requests and engaging with parents is the next topic. Children questioning their gender may make many different requests. Schools and colleges should not, right? Proactively initiate action towards a child's social transition. Should not. Okay, got it? Right, action should only be considered after it has been explicitly requested by the child and the steps set out below have been followed, including engaging with parents. There could be instances where children disclose first to their teachers that they may be questioning their gender. If there is no change being requested, teachers can listen respectfully about a child's feelings without automatically alerting parents, but for safeguarding reasons, cannot promise confidentiality. If a school or college wishes to accommodate degrees of social transition, they are advised to do the following. And here it comes. Wait for a period of time before considering a request to ensure it is a sustained and properly thought through decision. This period of watchful waiting may help to ensure unnecessary action is not undertaken. So allow for watchful waiting. Right? It's not enough in my book, but then it was never going to be, was it? But for my book to work, we need primary legislation. And I know that's what many of you want, right? But we've got to work with the tools that we've got, and there's some good tools here. Make parents aware if a child requests a change. Schools and colleges should make parents aware of the situation and can point them to support outside the school environment. For example, pastoral or medical support if they request more information. The only exception to this is the very rare situation where informing parents might raise a significant risk of harm to the child. If, after a period of watchful waiting, the child would still like their request to be granted, schools and colleges involving their designated safeguarding lead are advised to take into account the following points. School or college's safeguarding obligations. Legal duties will differ depending on the request. These are outlined in the guidance below, where the guidance advises that schools or colleges should adopt a certain approach or are able to set clear rules in a particular area. This should apply in the overwhelming majority of cases and be the starting point for decision making. However, in some areas, the school or college must be prepared to depart from the expected approach or from those rules in the exceptional case where it is necessary to do so to safeguard and promote the welfare of the child. In doing so, they should note that safeguarding requires an individual to consider what is in the best interest of the child, which may not be the same as the child's wishes. The guidance states where schools or colleges do not need to consider an exception. The view of the parents must be taken into account. Parental consent to be required in the vast majority of cases. The view of parents. It is important that the views of the child's parents should carry great weight and be properly considered. We would expect parental consent to be required in the vast majority of cases. The age of the child. Age is a factor. Whenever making a decision of this nature, requests from younger children in primary schools should be treated with greater caution. They are more vulnerable as they are less able to articulate their feelings and will have a less mature understanding of complicated issues. I disagree with that, by the way. Any child does this is safeguarding straight away. Any relevant clinical information that is available. While neither child or their parents are obligated to share medical advice with schools and colleges, where such advice is available, schools and colleges should factor it into their decision making. There won't be any. In the vast majority of cases, there won't be any. The seriousness and context of the request should also be taken in. Schools and colleges should take into consideration whether the child has made similar requests previously and whether the child has properly considered the impact of their requests. As part of testing whether there is a sustained request, schools and colleges should seek to understand societal or other factors that may have influenced the child. For example, has the child been influenced by peers or social media? There's number one. Bang. That will take in many cases. Has the child been influenced by peers or social media? An investigation of the child's devices by parents will show whether or not they've been influenced by trans nutters and gender loons. Right? Does the child feel pressured to identify differently because they simply do not align with stereotypes associated with their sex? This is relevant as some people think gender identity reinforces stereotypes about men and women. This is absolutely key as well. There'll be kids in the school going, yeah, but you're trans really, you're not this, you're not that, not other. Particularly if the kid's gay or lesbian. And they'll be the ones that get the hardest time of it. Or if they're autistic and easily led by this kind of DreamWorks nonsense. You know, this mental transgender nonsense. So it's very important. Very important. Are they being pressured by their peers? The answer will be, in most cases, yes. In which case, that's the second point. And that's really beginning to chip away at whether the child should be allowed to do what they want to do. Whether it may be appropriate at schools and colleges to seek input from the SENCO or college's SEND lead. Yes, here we go. Right, this is absolutely vital, is that SENCO and SEND in schools must be fully educated to understand how this cult works. There's a market there, isn't there, folks? And I've got it. I've got most of it. SENCO and SEND. We need a SENCO and SEND education programme that is available to school people who are in that position. Who could fund that? I'll have to have a think. You have a think, right? So that we can get them sent to understand here's where it started, here's where it's ended, here's all the dangers, and that's why that child's in front of you, so that we can educate the trans and gender guff out of them. I like this bit, but then I would, wouldn't I? Is there an interaction with a child's sexual orientation is the next one. Here we go. We know over 80%, 90%, maybe even more in some cases. It's sexual orientation that's at hand here. Schools and colleges should note that the Cass Review heard from young lesbians who felt pressured to identify as transgender male, and conversely transgender males who pressured to come out as lesbian rather than transgender. Where a child discloses that they are also questioning or exploring their sexual orientation, schools should make clear that they are under no pressure to reach a particular outcome. And then the link is there to the Cass Review. Somebody coming out as gay or lesbian it doesn't affect anyone apart from them, so just let them get on with it. It's got nothing to do with being trans. That's a different thing altogether. One is a natural human state, the other one's a mental illness. So the long and short-term impact on the child is the next one. We do not yet have definitive evidence on the long and short-term impact of changes on children. Definitive evidence. No, they don't have the definitive evidence. We know it's true, right? But what do we think? What do we know? What can we prove? We only know that it damages the child. We can't yet prove it. Not in any meaningful way that they can use. That's the problem. And I'm not being cruel there, I'm being realistic. We do not yet have definitive evidence on the long and short-term impact of changes on children, but the Cass Review's interim report is clear that it could have significant psychological effects on a young person. Schools and colleges should therefore take a cautious approach. This is absolutely saying there is a damaging element to this psychologically. If you allow your child to do this, you are being wanton as a parent, and you should be held up as being wanton. You must work with the school to stop this. So very good there. Could affect particularly the trans housing mother and father. The schools and colleges should consider the impact on other pupils, including any safeguarding concerns. Once schools and colleges have balanced those factors above, including the impact on the child, they may conclude that the impact on the school and college community is such that it may not be possible to agree to support a request. I would be wholly surprised unless there is ideological interference from trans activists and critical social justice teachers who are already embedded in the system and need to be oiked out for the ticks they are in the buttock educational, right? To get them out, right? That unless they're involved, it would strike me there would never be a situation where it would be okay. This is only guidance though, remember. Completing the above steps will not be sufficient to allow a gender questioning child access to spaces designated for the other sex, or to sports where it is not safe or fair to take part with the opposite sex. For these matters, schools and colleges should follow the guidance included later in this document. So here we go, stitching up the various loopholes so we can get down to where the final one is, and then maybe, finally, after that, and if we don't end up with a mad Labour government, we can start looking at primary legislation, end the GRA and get rid of the whole damn lot. If and where any change has been agreed, the school or college should communicate this to other pupils and staff where it is necessary and proportionate to do so. This should be done sensitively without implying contested views around gender identity are fact, right? Other pupils, parents and teachers may hold protected religious or other beliefs that conflict with the decision that the school or college has made. These are legitimate views that must be respected. Right? Here we go, peeps, right? So I'm going to skip a bit. You can read, some of it's like, interesting, but not stuff I want to bring to your attention now. So you're going to read this, of course you are. Pronouns, let's do that nonsense. Agreeing to a child's request to have others use different pronouns about them is a significant decision. Primary school age children should not have different pronouns. Should not have different pronouns to their sex-based pronouns used about them. For older children, schools do not need to specify pronouns to be used about each pupil and can decline a request to change a child's pronouns. Where a school or college considers a child's request, they should consult the child's parents and consider all the relevant factors as outlined above. Having considered these factors and examined all the evidence, schools and colleges should only agree to a change of pronouns if they are confident that the benefit to the individual child outweighs the impact on the school community, which it will never do. There's a bit of Spock going on. Sometimes the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Con! Glorious, right? We're making headway. We're going forward. Come on. This is the best Christmas present we could hope for. It's not perfect, right? We know it's not perfect. The fight still continues. But this is a great start, folks. A great start. We move forward. It's tremendous to me, I think. So yeah, just stop whinging about the bits that are missing and let's be happy for a minute, shall we? I think. Right. So it says, and then it goes on to talk about what else to do if it does actually happen. And bullying of a child must not, you don't bully children. No child should be sanctioned for honest mistakes when adapting to a new way of interacting with other people. So if there's a people that they're going to do it for, which there ain't going to be, right? Or if they are, it's going to be ended pretty quick. Whatever decision is taken with regard to the use of a new name or pronoun, schools must still include the legal name and sex of the pupil in the admissions register as required by the Education Regulations of England 2006. Single-sex spaces, they go on to protect those, all right? Statutory requirement for both maintained and independent schools to provide sex-separated toilets for people aged 8 or over, and suitable changing accommodation showers for pupils who are aged 11 years or over at the start of the school year. Then it goes into toilets, changing rooms, showers, boarding and residential accommodation, again, stuff of interest. Uniforms, it talks about uniforms. Again, consult the parents. It's all about giving the parents the power. And parents must now take that power and look and see what this toolkit gives them to go into school and say, this is enough. It stops. My child is not supporting this child's lunacy. My child is not supporting this child's mental illness. Does he give us that power? Is it there, hidden in this? Are these tools available to us? What can we do? Physical education in sport is then covered. Then you have legal considerations that are covered, which are people of greater legal mind than I will, I'm sure, sit down, look at, and then bring to us some illumination. And it says here, single-sex schools. A single-sex school is a school that admits, or for the purpose of the Equality Act, can be taken to admit children of one sex. It's only done on sex. They can refuse to admit pupils of other biological sex, regardless of whether the child is questioning the gender. A school cannot, however, refuse to admit a child of the same biological sex on the basis that they are questioning their gender. In other words, it's based on sex. Look, it's not perfect, all right? Okay, we knew it wasn't going to be perfect, but I'm saying that hidden in this documentation are tools that teachers can use. Not teachers, students can use, and in fact, teachers who know this is nonsense, and head teachers can use to go, we're done with this, it's over, right? What it should also do, and the one thing I'm surprised is not in here, it hasn't clarified that these bloody identity groups like the LGBTQI school after group bum fumbling club need to close. That's the bit that's missing for me. No affinity groups based on identity will be allowed in schools. That's what it should have said. Advise against it, because that's where the grooming's going on. That's where the push for transing is going on. That's where the transing the gay away is going on. But nevertheless, this Jester Special ends with me saying, I think this is a win. A palpable win. And it's not the only win that we need, but it's one of them. So let's keep fighting. Let's find the tools in this new guidance. And let's use that against activist teachers and activist schools. And let's close this bloody shindig down. Hooray, says I. And onwards, good peeps.